Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. And I would like to go ahead and call the Finance Government Operations Committee, FGOC Committee meeting to order at this time. I am Supervisor Otto Lee, the chair of this committee, along with Vice Chair Supervisor Susan Ellenberg. With both supervisors present, we have a quorum. And the second item is the public comments, and this item is reserved for members of the public to address the committee on any items not on this agenda. And any public who wish to address the committee on items not on the agenda should request to speak at this time. We are not allowed to do committee action or extend discussion on any items that is not on the agenda except under special circumstances. But if action is requested, the committee may place the matter on the future agenda. And statements that require response may be referred to staff for reply in writing. Clerk, please let us know how many speakers do we have for public comment, please?
I have no requests either in chambers or online.
Nobody on the Zoom as well. Okay, good. Thank you very much. That makes it easy. Then we move to item number 3, which is to approve the consent calendar and changes to the committee's agenda. Item number 3 here is the approval of agenda and any changes to the consent. Supervisor Ellenberg, I actually do have a following changes to consider for today's agenda, and then I'll read through those if you're okay, and then if you have anything that you would like to add.
Absolutely.
Right now, I would like to also suggest to add items 5, 6, 12, and 13 to the consent calendar, and request item number 7 and 8 to be heard concurrently. And even though some are on the consent, I would like to add comments on 6, 12, and 20 once I have heard from you if you have any other items to add.
Thank you, Supervisor Lee. I agree. What I would like to do with 7 and 8, if you're amenable, is flip the order. I think it makes more sense to talk about 8 first and then 7. Happy to do it together if that's your wish. Thank you. And in addition to your requests for consent, did your list include item 4?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I want to hear 4.
Okay. And then 10 and 12. Nope, 10 was on your, there's something happening in my screen right now, sorry.
Right now,
Did
we
you
are
ask for
hearing, right
item
now we're
10?
hearing 10, yes.
And you would like to hear item 10?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Then my only addition is to hear 8 before 7.
Great, thank you.
I'm sorry, Supervisor, I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you?
Okay, let me, better?
Yes.
My apologies,
Much.
sorry about that. So, was that clear? I could actually want to go ahead and repeat the changes.
If you
again.
don't mind.
So the items that we are now going to be hearing on the agenda would be item number 4, and we will do item number 8 before 7, and then item number 9, item number 10, item number 11, and item number 14. Am I correct?
So 12 and 13 move to consent, and everything else on consent stays there?
Yeah. 5 and 6 is consent as well.
Item 6 is consent. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. That's clear. Okay,
That's
so
great.
do you
I
have
do
any
have a-
comments on any items on consent you would like to, I'll let you get start first.
Thank you. I have a comment just on item 5.
Okay.
5 is the implementation of the CBO grant program that's being managed by the VMC Foundation. This was really an excellent report, and the data provided showing the outreach and scoring processes for the grant applications I found to be very thorough. So I'm happy to have it on consent. I wanted to just take a moment to appreciate the CEO's office and the VMC Foundation for implementing this grant program. I know there's more to do to execute the agreements, but I am very encouraged by the strong response to the program and by the thoughtful integration of COVID recovery with efforts to advance equity through this program. So thank you all for that really great work.
Okay, let me go ahead and make some comments on those on consent. Actually, I would like to start with items number 17 on consent, which will stay on consent, but I'd like to ask the administration to come back next month at the April FGOC meeting for discussion on the regular agenda regarding these monthly cash reports and specifically on the SCVH fund group. For item number 6, which is a report from the Office of Sustainability regarding county sustainability achievements and progress on our sustainability master plan. Thanks so much for the update, and I'm excited to see this coming back on the April 4th meeting for the full board to adopt the creation of a commission. I want to also request that the draft application provided to our office, knowing that we are tailoring the application to include questions that will help the creation of a well-rounded commission. I'm looking forward to the great work that you'll be able to help move this toward the goal so that our Santa Clara County, a good sample or model for other to follow. For item number 12, which is relating to fiscal year 22-23 annual work plan and budget for the County of Santa Clara, Moscow SCC County Commission, I want to thank our commission for their dedication service, especially to stand up for peace and an end of this unjust war. When we took several measures in our sister commission's relationship with Moscow, we have continued to support the commission because of their commitment to the citizen diplomacy and the support for an end to the invasion of Ukraine. To this effort, the commission is working with Open World Fund to host 2 delegations from Ukraine in Santa Clara County this year. And adoption of this work plan and budget will ensure the commission continues to move forward. And we are also very excited that they have been chosen for these delegations, and I'm extending my full support. One additional note I would like to add is about the boards and commissions meetings in person. As it has been mentioned before, many of our boards and commissions struggle to meet due to quorum. Now that meetings are required to meet in person. And I want to extend my support to finding the solution to allow for hybrid meetings so that commissions and board members may continue to utilize our online spaces for participation. And thanks very much to the clerks and our county staff for the hard work on making this happen and addressing this concern. For item number 20, which is relating to the government fellowship program, I would like to keep it on consent, and my comments are that. First, I want to thank and acknowledge Andrea along with the rest of the staff for their hard work in administering the increase of the fellowship program to 20 fellows. And I'm grateful for my board colleagues to support my request, expanding a program with an increase in allocation during the budget process. This signifies to the public that this board is looking to provide meaningful and professional career building opportunities to our students, and also provides potential pipeline for our county departments to scout professional talent. Though this is a one-time allocation, I want to be clear to the administration that moving forward, I hope that this expansion to 20 fellows is the new status quo. I'm hoping and requesting the administration that the ongoing budget allocation for the government fellowship program make enough funds available to move forward for upcoming fiscal year budget requests to make sure that this 20 numbers would continue. And that being said, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on the consent item now that we have mentioned all the changes, in case there's anybody who would like to talk about any of those.
Would you like a motion to
Please,
adopt the
please.
consent calendar? So moved.
And I'll second that.
I have no requests either in chambers or in the Zoom webinar.
Okay, I'll then go ahead and close the public hearing, and let's take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Chairperson Lee?
Yes as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving forward, we have item number 4 on the agenda. It's a report from the Social Services Agency, Department of Aging and Adult Services, relating to the in-home service support, IHSS call center, and overdue reassessment. And I believe to present this item today, we have Deborah Portia Usher, the Interim Director of SSA, and her team. Welcome.
No, Deborah Portia Usher is not here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm Mary Ann Warren, the Director of the Department of Aging and Adult Services, and my colleague Terry Postley is the Program Manager for IHSS, and we have another colleague here, Susan Chang, to do the PowerPoint.
Great, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Supervisors Ellenberg and Lee. I'm Terry Postley, IHSS Program Manager. I'm happy to describe all of the progress IHSS has made over the last few months. As you know, IHSS is fully committed to improving the customer experience by reducing phone wait times, application processing, and overdue reassessments. Should we wait for the PowerPoint?
I don't see it up on Zoom yet.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. I'll start by showing you this next slide, which concisely outlines our phone data from July through February. As you can see, we experienced a spike in phone calls at the beginning of this year in January and February. Unfortunately, this is typical and happens every year because providers inquire about their W-2s. The column named abandoned calls represents when callers hang up before the call agent had a chance to answer the call. A 12 to 18% abandoned call rate is typical for us and is a vast improvement from early 2022 when the abandoned call rate was about 30%. We are very proud to have maintained this. However, you can see there is a spike of abandoned calls in January and February. We believe this is related to the spike in phone calls received in January and February when providers were inquiring about their W-2s. Our experience shows a pattern of increased phone calls received and abandoned during these months. We also have another theory that callers have been accustomed to our 2 to 5 minute wait times. We believe frequent callers who wait beyond 3 minutes hang up and try again later. The average wait time is defined as the time a caller waits to speak to a call agent. You can see our average wait times column ranged anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, a vast improvement from about a year ago when wait times were as long as 10 minutes. We are very proud of this, and I commend my staff for continuing to work hard on moving to the next caller more efficiently. Yes, the data shows that wait times went up in January and February, but with an increase in calls with the same number of staff, this will naturally result in longer wait times during these months. Some of the reasons call wait times have reduced to as low as 3 minutes are because of the several changes and implementations that took place last year when an IHSS continuous quality improvement work group initiated. We updated our website, launched a public email address, created an easy visual tool to assist applicants through the application process, and used data from the IHSS dashboard, which now displays our call center data. The column showing average number of call agents shows that we typically have between 10 to 12 call agents. The column identifying the number of DSWs deployed represents the total disaster service workers in the IHSS program and includes everyone, so from call agents, workers, clerical, payroll, and managers. We are very grateful that our last DSW returned to IHSS last month. The last column showing pending referrals represents the number of IHSS applications that are waiting to be assigned to social workers. The pending referrals are with support staff who are collecting demographic information and sending out the required form for the licensed healthcare professional to indicate the applicant needs support in order to remain safely in their home. We have 6 support staff who fill these codes, and they manage these pending referrals, and we receive anywhere from 10 to 40 new referrals every day. This table shows that we were starting to come down in our backlog in September and October, but once 2 support staff went on extended leaves, our referrals began to climb again. During the final months of 2022, we offered overtime to the staff who were caught up on their work, and it was making a difference until the other 2 staff began their leaves. With all of this in mind, it's important to note that the number of referrals is not directly correlated to the call center data. Bless you. This next slide shows the same data presented to our IHSS call center dashboard. On our dashboard. TSS continues to develop a dashboard in partnership with IHSS. Phase 1 of the dashboard implemented in July of last year, and it combined data elements from 5 existing call center reports. The completion of Phase 1 has allowed management to see trends, successes, and areas that need improvement. IHSS management is very pleased with the outcome and has utilized the dashboard data at least weekly. Creation of Phase 2 of IHSS's call center dashboard started in July of last year. Phase 2 discussions included adding trending filters to compare percentage changes through the day, week, month, quarter, and year. Phase 2 may also include adding agent reports and interval reports, adding an agent state performance tab, and identifying business and performance goals. These reports will provide more data to show individual call agent performance as well as each other's agents' break times and time spent on activities outside the call center. Phase 2 is expected to go live on June 2nd of this year. Some of the IHSS call center enhancements starting at the end of April include revising the call tree to shorten the process of connecting the caller to a call agent, and also implementing the callback feature, which will allow the caller to hang up and enable the system to call them back to speak to a live call agent without losing their place in queue. And also implementing a call recording for supervision and training purposes. Moving on to the last slide to talk about IHSS overdue reassessments. Since early 2014, the state has required that counties conduct face-to-face annual reassessments with at least 80% of the county's IHSS recipients. So for our county, this means that we were required to see at least 23,495 recipients face-to-face in fiscal year '22 with 103 social workers. This is in addition to the intake assessments for new IHSS recipients. In fiscal year '21, we were compliant with 80% of Santa Clara County's recipients. Unfortunately, the following fiscal year, we fell out of compliance, landing at about 70.08%. You can see this progress in the chart on the left. And the main reason we fell out of compliance was because when COVID hit, more than 2 units of social workers were activated as DSWs in the community, helping with vaccinations, testing, contact tracing, and many more important responsibilities. And at the peak of the pandemic, as many as 16 social workers were activated as DSWs. So having 16 fewer social workers meant that as many as 5,000 home visits were not completed. And completing 5,000 fewer home visits in a year greatly impacted our progress. The chart on the right shows community first choice options, which we call CIFCO, federally funded cases. They require a compliance of 90% minimally. We fell short at 76% compliance during fiscal year '22, and the state has asked counties to prioritize scheduling these CIFCO cases over non-CIFCO cases, which is why compliance is slightly higher with these cases. We are monitoring our progress and would like to see our annual reassessment rate increase. However, this is not likely, and allow me to explain why. So effective October of last year, we implemented a new business process in which intakes will be assigned, even though we have not received the required healthcare certification form from the doctor. This means that far more intakes will be assigned in a shorter period of time, and shorter waiting periods for intake assessments means we will be conducting an increased number of intake assessments each month. Shorter waiting periods for intake assessments is great news for the community, and it's what they have been waiting for. It means that individuals waiting to receive IHSS will be seen quicker and have their cases opened in a shorter period of time, likely within weeks instead of months. But at the same time, assigning more intakes to social workers competes with the ongoing annual reassessment efforts. If we are accurate in our projected growth and increased intake assignments, we are likely to remain out of compliance with the state for some time to come. IHSS management meets with the state monthly, and the state is aware of the new business process and in which the intakes are assigned in a shorter period of time. The state is in support of this effort, even though they recognize that it may put our county further out of compliance with annual reassessments. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you for the detailed report. Do we have anybody in the public who would like to speak on this item right now?
I don't have any requests.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go ahead and ask the first question. On the CIFCO, the Community First Choice Options cases, those are federally funded, and I see that there's actually a very high compliance rate of 90% minimally, and that's why they need to be pushed forward. Do you really think there's anything else that we can do besides what you mentioned in order to increase the number closer to at least in the 80s?
I feel like we have tried everything up at this point, including hiring more staff, working with the staff to increase their home visits. And unfortunately, we're really limited to those two things kind of happening simultaneously. I'm open to ideas. We're always trying to try new things, make things easier for social workers so that they don't have to do any activities outside of managing their cases. But I feel like we're at the point where we've done all that we can.
Is it a matter of logistics here? Are we saying we don't have enough funding or do not have enough people? Where do you think is the bottleneck in terms of trying to get these numbers up?
Well, the social workers have limitations on the number of home visits that they would complete in a given month. And so if we have, right now we have 115 codes. If we have 115 of them doing their caseload standard, we're not going to be in compliance.
So basically, we need more people to do the work. Is that basically
Correct.
boils down to that? And in your opinion, how let's say, when this never happens, where budget doesn't matter, but if money is not the issue in terms of just asking the question, how many more staff would you need to increase to meet those numbers? What's the number would you guesstimate to be?
We would love if money was not the issue, but we estimate at least 2 to 3 units minimally, and each unit has 9 social workers. And that would have to increase over each passing year, right? Because we have a growth of about 5% each year with the program, more recipients coming in needing IHSS.
Right. And so along that line, I'm talking to the person who would have the ability to control the budget side. I'm going to ask, I know Dr. Smith is here. If I might trouble you on this question regarding hiring. So the question on trying to, no, the world's perfect. If we could hire as many people as we need to meet the potential 90% minimal compliance for the CFCO, I was just told we need 2 to 3 units, 9 social workers apiece. The question, I guess, is the budget, of course, is an issue. In terms of the formula, on the medical side, when we do more, we also get reimbursed more. On the IHSS side, is that true as well, that we hire people, will we be able to get funding to sources, or this will all be coming from us only to serve the need to meet these numbers?
2 questions. First one is, can we add more staff? And we're looking at that as part of the budget process right now. So I can't make a commitment either way, and we're checking into it. Mm-hmm. The second one about whether we get matching funds, I think we do, but I'll leave it.
Yes, we do.
Right.
It's 50%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My recollection is that it's 50-50, unless Greg knows something different. So that'll help us with defraying some of the costs.
Right, half off, basically.
Right.
We for every
Half off.
individual, every 2 people individual we hire, we only pay for 1.
Yeah.
To provide the service of 2. So in that sense, that's certainly a good. So I would ask maybe for you to come back to Dr. Smith, if it's okay. Maybe would you say next FGOC to give us kind of an update of what you can imagine for the future budget, whether we could look into hiring more folks in this unit?
Sure, we can do that.
That would be great. Thank you. And I think I heard there is already a callback system where the caller could actually, leave a phone number so that they don't have to wait on the queue forever, and you guys could call them back. So that system's already in place, correct?
We're going to start talking about that April with TSS. So it's been on the list of our priorities for some time, and it's now reaching a place in the queue where we're getting ready to talk about that.
Good.
TSS. So we're looking forward to that.
I mean, the technology is certainly there. I've done that with many places like my car airline, and they'll say you'll be at 20 minutes, but we'll call you back, and they do call me back. So certainly something that is very convenient for the caller, I think, in many ways. So if we could get that implemented sooner, the better, I think.
We
Yes.
can't wait.
Okay, great. Thank
If
you.
I could interrupt 1 second.
Sure.
Sandy Steer from TSS is here, and she can address those questions as well.
Sure.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, good. Thank you. April it is. All right, and that's all the questions I have. Yes, Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any questions for this?
I don't have questions on this item. Thank you for the report.
Okay, and I'm ready to entertain a motion.
Is there direction or just to receive the report?
Oh, I just received a report, and actually, the only direction, I guess, would be to ask the county exec to come back with us regarding potentially adding additional people and what would take logistically to make that happen to help improve those CFCO numbers.
If that's your motion, I'm very happy to second it.
Thank you. All right, that being said, let's take a vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Chairperson Lee?
Yes, as well. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unanimously approved. And let me see. Now we're moving to item number, I believe, is 7 and 8 together, but we're doing 8 first, correct?
Thank you.
Right. Okay, good. Okay, so here, Okay, good, all right. So item number 8 is to receive a report from the Management Audit Division relating to the 2020 Management Audit of the Capital Programs Division. Here to present, I believe, is, who do we have to, oh, Cheryl, you're here today, correct, and your team?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I don't actually have a full presentation today.
That's fine.
This was previously heard, and my understanding was that it would be heard concurrent with
7.
item 7. I'm not quite sure what information you would like to go over about the audit.
No worries, yeah, we'll just take questions. Actually, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and open up a public hearing. Anybody in the public would like to speak on item 8 and 7, since we're taking this concurrently?
I have no requests.
Okay, good. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'll go ahead and ask Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any questions?
I do, on both 8 and 7. Is there a presentation for 7, or should I ask about both together?
Yeah, this is Greg Etruria, County Budget Director. There is a PowerPoint in the package, but we could also just defer to your questioning if you
Why
like.
don't I start with item 8, and then we'll pause for a moment and see if it just blends right into 7, or if it makes sense to stop and see the and have the public see the PowerPoint. Of course, we've had access to it. So let me start, Greg, then with a thank you to you and to Jeff Draper for the continued work on coordinated capital planning across the county, and to Cheryl and your team at Harvey Rose for the 2020 audit of this area. I appreciate it coming back. I was not sitting on FGOC in 2020, and things change so quickly that I find it to be of great value to bring these reports back and to make sure that we are following up on agreed on item recommendations for implementation. So let me turn, is Jeff Draper here?
He is.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Jeff.
Hi.
My office received a very brief update about progress on these recommendations earlier this week, but I don't believe that FGOC has historically received the typical and what should be expected 3, 6, 9, and 12-month detailed updates on the implementation plan. Is that accurate?
I believe it is.
Okay. So, and what I'm noticing is that it appears, oh, now I can see your face on my screen. Hi there. It appears that many audit recommendations have still not been fully implemented, and I would be interested in seeing more detailed reports in the coming months. And I'll give you some examples that I'm thinking about for the June report in particular. Number one, I'd like it to include an updated org chart for fleet and facilities. I believe the chart that's in the 2020 audit was outdated even then. Second, an update to the capital planning process that addresses kind of a broader process for conducting a countywide needs assessment with an emphasis both on public transparency and board input into capital planning. What I'm trying to assess and gather, and Greta, I'm looking at you as well, to really understand our approach to capital projects. It feels to me that it's a bottoms-up approach in which departments submit approvals, and the Administrative Capital Committee, which is made up of just 3 people, and I have something to say about that as well, reviews and prioritizes the reports. And what then that leads me to conclude is that we don't necessarily have a top-down, countywide, strategic or comprehensive view of where the county should be investing in capital projects, or a mechanism for the board to provide input to the process. I think it's also important, transparency is also important so that the public can see how we are prioritizing capital planning. And I think I recall, Cheryl, that in the Harvey Rose special study of debt, there was a recommendation to add board members to 1 or more board members to the Administrative Capital Committee or create a Brown-acted commission to review the proposed county debt issuances and hence major capital projects. Is that a correct memory, Cheryl? I'm not sure if you heard the question or if you're just conferring to.
Are you
the answer.
speaking about the capital audit, or are you speaking about a different audit?
Right now, I'm speaking about the capital audit, but I was referring back to a report on debt and a recommendation there that there be some board involvement and perhaps some public insight or oversight. So I was wondering if that fits with, if you think that would fit with this model as well.
With the recommendations related to the CIP?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Because it's all interrelated, the CIP is obviously a driver of debt.
Okay, then what I'd like to do, and I'll look to council for a moment, to see if I can make this as a motion here, which would be that when the June report is presented to FGOC, to include a recommendation from staff on how to improve this process of, in terms of a needs assessment, public transparency, and board input into the process. And I'm asking because I'm not certain if this can be a motion here to be implemented or if it needs to be a referral, in which case it just takes longer to get it in motion, and want to give as much time as possible for this work.
Can you restate your suggested motion? I guess I'm not quite clear on what you're requesting.
So when the report should come back in June, because we should be following up and doing the 3-month report. So maybe let's back up to that too. Capital planning is definitely a mission critical function at the county. And I think looking really ahead at the next 8 to 10 years, the CEO and the board may need to consider resource allocations in these areas. So with these two specific requests, the organizational chart, which I assume should be a very easy one, and a recommendation from staff on an improved process, something that is strategic and all-encompassing rather than looking project by project.
Let me try.
Okay, apologies
Certainly-
if I'm confusing. It's clear in my brain, but let me see if we can get it out.
Well, let's see, that makes it clear in, what, 17% of our minds. I think actually, it's clear in my mind what you're asking for also. Certainly, the org charts, no problem. We can come back at the next meeting with a up-to-date org chart. The other issue, I do think it would be a good idea for you to move today to have us come back at the next FGOC with a improved process and how we think it would impact the full board and the board policies. After we come back with that proposal, the committee will have to forward that on to the full board for approval, but at least you'll have our suggestion and anything that we think would be an alternate approach that might solve the concerns and address your issues. What I hear you saying is we want a more fulsome way of including board policy input as well as public input into the process. And if that's correct, I think we can do that and come back
And I'm
next
looking
time.
for recommendations to
Yeah.
come back of how to do it, certainly not a fleshed out needs assessment or major
Yeah,
body of
right.
work.
So we can do that.
Thank you. Through the chair, Greta?
Oh, I was going to say, I think this is consistent with what you're saying, Supervisor, but I heard two things separate from you. One is a question about resources within FAF to do capital planning, which speaks to the point Jeff made about coming back with the updated org chart, but also recommendations related to that or information from staff on that. And then separately, I was just going to agree that, one of the things that we've been reflecting on, and also for me as a new member of our administrative capital process, something that I know Dr. Smith agrees with, but the board policies that really govern that process were created at a time, and the process we're using when the county was a much smaller organization with far fewer capital requests to consider. And it's been illuminating to me to see how much of the capital requests coming inbound from departments are really about meeting mission-critical capital needs to continue service delivery as we have aging facilities that need significant upgrades. And as resources are somewhat limited, to embark upon what might be our collectively desired, much bigger policy priority-driven capital investments. And so I think some of what we can bring back also will try to separate out the way that we approach some of those sort of keeping the lights on oriented capital projects from one of the ones that really are driven by some of the policy direction that we are all trying to pursue.
Yeah, and adding to that, the current policy, which as Greta points out, was created years ago, implied that the involvement of the board and the public would happen at the board level meetings or at the policy committee meetings. But what I hear the board saying is that there is so much that's under consideration. We really need an improved process that will specifically call out ways that we can get more input. And so we'll be happy to come back with proposals.
Thank you. You both did understand me perfectly, despite the awkwardness with which I may have asked the question. I absolutely agree that the board policy around the CIP process and prioritization feels out of date. And what I think I would like to do, because I think this is a bigger referral request as opposed to direction here, but I'm interested in how we update that policy. We should have, and as Greta, you just described, an item related to the safety of our buildings, expansion of capacity for housing and residential treatments, seismic investments, how we put those in, and a strategy of shifting from lease to own properties, which I think we're moving that way as well, should be reviewed. So does that make, do I dare ask again if something makes sense?
We'll
To
include
do that as a referral to amend the policy, or is that direction that I can give here to propose amendments to it?
Policy can't be amended until it gets to the full board.
Perfect.
And I would just suggest that we agree with all of the things you said, and maybe you can ask us to include recommendations in the report back next
Perfect.
month.
Okay, thank you.
Because you're absolutely correct, there's problems with the old policy.
Excellent. And just my last comments about what I'd like to see during the upcoming budget process in the FAF budget recommendations, certainly the inclusion of behavioral health facilities and childcare facilities that are consistent with prior board direction. And was that a nod, Dr. Smith? Is that a confirmation that those board priorities will be reflected in the updated CIP?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. And to Jeff Draper, it was my understanding from one of our prior check-ins that you would be bringing a preliminary report to the CIP, on the CIP, to the April FGOC meeting. I believe, first, that's correct, yes?
I believe so. Greg
Okay.
can confirm because he's in charge of bringing things to the board at a schedule that's consistent with the budget process.
Got it, thank you for that. At the February 28th board meeting, in response to the VMC, I don't want to call it a master plan, but kind of a land use proposal, the board gave direction on next steps, including a report to FGOC in April. And my goal, I don't know if this is primarily for Mr. Atoria or Mr. Draper, but my goal is to see direct linkages between the land use proposals in the master plan and the capital improvement plan and the analysis of the funding for each proposed project. If that comes to FGOC in April, as the board directed in February, the next step would be to bring all of that information forward to a study session of the full board. So if I need to narrow it down at all, just want to confirm that the April FGOC agenda will include both the capital planning and that land use plan, so we can review both together.
Yeah, through the committee chair, we're on track for the May FGOC as far as the time to pull together all the material for this updated CIP. We're on track to get that completed at the end of April or about May 1st. So I don't know that we could have everything pulled together in time before that, just with everything coming together.
So the direction, and we can pull the language, was specifically for April so that this could be reviewed and studied by the board in an independent session in May, somewhere in the midst of the board workshops. How does that, what is the date? I don't know how to do that if it doesn't come to FGOC in April, and that was the direction from the board in February to come here in April so that the whole board could review in May.
The recommended budget will come out May 1st. And, you know, the workshops are designed for input from the board and direction, and also input from the public. I think where we're stuck from an administrative perspective is there's multiple issues all related to the same process due at different time periods. So we were envisioning giving you a comprehensive, well, part of the answer to the questions you have during the May budget, but also have the opportunity in the May FGOC to discuss it in addition to that.
Not the April FGOC.
We could only give you a pretty, superficial
Okay.
rendition of part of what you want in April.
I'd rather not have superficial.
Yeah, that would be better if we could put it off till May.
Yeah, it sounds like that's the most realistic way to go. And I'll look at the calendar and just kind of give some thought about where there's an opportunity before the budget is finalized for the board to have that study session on the capital improvement plan and the policy revisions. So I'll work offline on that. And thank you for answering all of my questions
Okay.
today.
Thank you.
One thing, Supervisor, that I was just going to add on the, in case it helps with some of your timing thinking, I think changes to the capital improvement process, which will really be what we launch next year for the subsequent budget discussion, might be things to put off until after the board's July recess, because we won't begin that process anew in earnest until the early fall. So there's a little bit more time on the process reform for the Administrative Capital Committee before next year, unlike the things that you want to happen concurrently with the budget process.
I think that makes perfect sense. Anything that is not tied to this year's budget should wait until August. So yes, thank you. And thanked the clerk who has to make sense of all of that and report it out.
Well, since you have a motion and we've seconded, we could certainly vote on that. First, before we hear 7, does that make sense?
Did that,
I did my comments on both 7 and 8.
Oh, okay, all right, so it's all there.
Up to you.
Thank you.
did that end up as a motion?
The motion was directly in connection with item 8. 7 was more of a jumble of how do I get to where I want, and it's not through a motion.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll go and second that. I believe, Cheryl, you said you have a slide you want to show on 7, is that correct? Or you don't need to at this point?
Did you mean for 8 or?
Oh, well, no, we started 8 and then 7, but if there's a PowerPoint you want to present, is there something you would like to present, or?
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Greg, sorry.
I'm sorry, yeah, through the chair. Item number 7 was the item I put together that for the CIP process.
Right,
But since we're going to be coming back with a proposal for a revision, I don't know if it makes sense to go through the old process.
It's not necessary,
don't-
right?
I don't know
Okay,
if that's
good.
necessary.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that everything's covered and we can move forward on both 8 and 7. All right?
Yeah, so I don't think there's anything from the management auditor on 8, unless you want something more. And then on 7, which was supposed to be from the clerk of the board, we probably don't need to go through the process since we're going to come back
Correct.
recommending a different process.
Great. Okay, so we're good to go. If that's the case, we're going to take the vote for both of those. Go ahead.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg,
Yes.
Chairperson Lee.
Yes as well. Thank you. Unanimously adopted. And now let's go to, let me go back to my notes here since we've been skipping around today. Okay, I believe after 8 and 7, we still have item 9. Am I correct? Okay. All right, next item. Item 9 is to receive report from Management Audit Division relating to implementation of recommendations from Management Audit of the Office of the Public Defender. And I believe, Cheryl, that's you again. Go ahead.
Yes, and I'm also here, I want to introduce Sarah Connor, who is on the remote link, and she also...
Yes, hi Cheryl, I'm here.
Yes. So in December, we were directed by Finance and Government Operations Committee to assess the implementation status of all 38 recommendations from the January 2022 management audit of the Public Defender Office. All of the recommendations were agreed to or partially agreed to by the Public Defender's Office in its response to the audit, and all of the recommendations were approved for implementation by the committee. As of early March 2023, we had documentation or have reviewed documentation demonstrating that 21 recommendations have been implemented, 16 recommendations have not been implemented, but management reports that there are ongoing efforts to implement them. The remaining recommendation has not been implemented because subsequent to the adoption of the recommendations, the public defender has disagrees with the implementation of that recommendation. And so that's the status of it as of a couple weeks ago.
Okay, there. Thank you so much. Let's see. Do we have anybody in public who would like to speak on this item?
We do not.
Okay, I'll go and close the public hearing. And first of all, I just want to thank Cheryl for the audit and the Public Defender's Office for accepting and implementing almost all of these recommendations, as the Public Defender's Office often does not get enough credit for all of the great work that they do. One question I do have is that the Public Defender's Office placed a request to add additional staff for the PAR team and also the felony and arraignment team as well. No, it's not. Try again.
How about that?
Much better, Molly. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Lee, Vice Chairperson Ellenberg, excuse me, and members of FGOC. We, first of all, would like to thank the management audit team for their work with us and the recommendations that they made, many of which we have adopted. In answer to your question, Supervisor Lee, we have, as part of the regular budget cycle, requested 2 additional positions for our PAR team, and I apologize, I didn't hear your second question.
Oh, it's about the felony and arraignment team. If there's any requests on those areas as well for future budget increases.
We have asked for a number of additional staff, which the county executive and the budget director are considering. That includes 10 additional attorney positions.
Okay, thank you very much. And Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any questions on this item?
I do have a few.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. First, congratulations to both the public defender and Harvey Rose on moving through this audit and completing so many of the recommendations. I think it's impressive. On item 1.9, I do understand that the specific issue has been resolved, but I have some concerns, as I'm sure you do as well, about bottlenecks in the referral system generally. And I'm wondering, Molly, if you can speak a little bit about what your office is doing to ensure that that referrals aren't falling through the cracks, and what mechanisms you may be thinking about for tracking unopened cases?
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg, for the question. I think that there may have been some lack of clarity around what that item was dealing with, and if I could, I would like to just explain.
Please. Thank you.
So we launched a new case management system 2.5, 3 years ago, 2019, and when we first launched, we had a problem. If the court referred a case to the public defender's office, it was very cumbersome to actually open that case in our case management system. And so there at that time was a delay between the referral and the actual opening of the case. We quickly worked with our vendor to change that process and make it less cumbersome. So our response to that and our disagreement had to do with the fact that there no longer exists a delay. So the openings happen very quickly after the referral. And so that's what they're talking about. It is not in reference to any backlog of trial cases or losing clients along the way after they're referred. It simply had to do with opening cases in our case management system.
Thank you. That is very helpful. The other piece that I'm interested in is the California Policy Lab report. Is that something that, along with the background on the PAR team and the positions that are being requested, is that something that you can share with all of the supervisors?
Yes, and I apologize. I should have introduced Assistant Public Defender Charlie Hendrickson and Assistant Public Defender Sarah McCarthy. I also have other public defender administration and staff here in case questions come up in their areas of oversight, but I would ask Charlie to answer that question as he oversees our PAR team.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Hi, Charlie.
So, yeah, we've been working since 2019 with the California Policy Lab to study the PAR program and the effects of early representation on outcomes for our clients. So the short answer to your question is yes, you will receive their report when it's completed. They have, all their numbers are done. They have a draft report that's going through peer review right now, and it's expected, I think, to be completed this month or early in April. So we will have it shortly. They have previewed it with us, the outcomes, what they have. And I would say this, that the study was unfortunately small sample size because of the pandemic. The study launched in January of 2020, and their data set terminated in March of 2020 because we were no longer able to access the jails and continue the program. So that limited their data set. With that said, though, there are positive outcomes that are coming out of that report. One is that it decreases or increases the number of folks that are released pre-trial or at arraignment. Mm-hmm. And two, then has a corollary effect on the number of days in jail that an individual spends.
Thanks. And of course, that's what I'm hoping the data will show, and I understand that a small sample set is tough to make generalizations from. But is it possible that we can start with another larger pilot set? I don't want to try to bring this fully forward and say this works and then be challenged on the data because it's so small. I want us to have, all of the receipts in hand and then go big.
Yeah, that's an excellent observation. And Dr. Laco at the California Policy Lab is very interested in basically doing.
You have to stay near your mic or your voice goes in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Dr. Laco is spearheading the work at the California Policy Lab, and we are in discussion to essentially do a second part of the study right now with a larger data set and perhaps looking at expanding the number of outcomes that we track.
Excellent. And do you happen to know if there are similar pilots in any other counties so that we can aggregate data?
I don't believe that the California Policy Lab did an initial program with the pretrial release unit at San Francisco, which was the first early representation unit in the state of California. We are the second.
Ah, okay.
And we're ahead of the curve. So the only other study is the one in San Francisco. I will say that Santa Clara County should commend itself for being ahead of the curve because in November of 2022, the California Committee on the Revision of the Penal Code, which is a interdisciplinary group that meets and makes large-scale recommendations for changes to the penal code, has recommended that the penal code be amended to require early representation for all public defense clients in the state of California.
Wow. All right, thank you for all of that information. It really is exciting work, and I'm look forward to seeing how we expand that. And I find that our county is very often ahead of the curve.
Thank you.
Supervisor Ellenberg, may I just tack on to that point that only 2 jurisdictions in California are doing early representation, and mention that about a year ago, or maybe a year and a half, the chief public defender in Los Angeles, Ricardo Garcia, came to hear a presentation from our early representation unit, as they would like to replicate it and do it in Los Angeles, which would be great and should give us a lot of data to compare with. When our former chief operating officer, Miguel Marquez, was here, he heard about it and came over and joined in. So he heard the presentation, but we are really proud of the work. Thank you.
Yeah, with good reason. Thank you all.
Just to tack onto that very quick.
A lot of tacking.
We've also presented to San Diego, and I think that they are going to start their own early representation program. And the Office of the State Public Defender is pushing it statewide and has asked us, and we did participate in a training for Central California counties that are less well-funded to strategize about ways to begin the work in a smaller way with less funding, and we did that. And in fact, we had 2 attorneys spend 2 days in Central California with the public defender's offices, training them on best practices for early representation.
That's incredible. Let's talk offline about getting this in front of the whole CSAC board, so that all of the counties can hear at once and ask their questions, and maybe we can spur some quick action here.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That was very exciting news indeed, and thank you for that good work on the early representation area. Anything else, Cheryl, on this item, or we good?
No, sir.
Okay. If that's the case, I'm ready for a motion.
A motion's not required.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is just to information only, so no action required, and okay. And we've gone through the public hearing, didn't we? Yes, okay, thank you. Sometimes I forgot. So go ahead and move to the next item. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we're now on item number 10, which is also from Management Audit Division regarding the audit of the Probation Department, Juvenile Division Quality Systems, and provide direction regarding its recommendation. I give a minute here for our folks from probation.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty here. It is, but it's off.
Good afternoon, Nick. And yes, you want to introduce your team? No.
There we go.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Lee and Supervisor Ellenberger. With us today is our Fiscal Officer, John Tran, Deputy Chief Jill Ugaldi over our Juvenile Services, Supervisor Dustin Ng, and Mario Caballero.
Great, thank you very much. And let's see, let me check to see if Cheryl, you have any items to present on this one, or do you need some more time?
Uh, Let me just go ahead. For some reason, it's not responding. So this audit of the Juvenile Probation Division's Quality Systems Unit was published in January of 2023. So it's pretty current. And the report contains 3 findings and 7 recommendations. The probation department agrees with 5 of the 7 recommendations and answered neutral to 1 recommendation and disagrees with 1 recommendation. And I'm not sure why my presentation is starting on section 3, but can't seem to change it, so my apologies. Section 1 of the report relates to Title 4E case plans. And the federal Title 4E foster care program provides funding to state and local governments for portions of maintenance and administrative costs related to working with children in foster care or at imminent risk of foster care. There we go.
Now we can see it, yes.
And Justice Benefits contracts with the probation department to perform a quarterly time study which identifies juvenile probation division officer time spent on Title 4E eligible activities. JBI also audits Title 4E case plans, which are used to document eligibility for the funding, to remove ineligible activities from claiming, flag case plans that need correcting, and identify any additional time eligible for reimbursement. JBI's reviews and audits have found recurring issues with juvenile probation department case plans and incorrectly claimed random moments, which are the time study components. For instance, over a 3-year period, 363 of 3,650, or about 10% of time study moments claimed to Title 4E were associated with case plans that had an issue that made them ineligible for reimbursement. And we've estimated $617,000 in net foregone revenue associated with that. And I'll get to the recommendations at the end. In Section 2, which is related to Deputy Probation Officer Training Program, the Quality Systems Unit is responsible for developing and implementing a standardized training curriculum for deputy probation officers who are new to the juvenile probation division unit, which consists of 16 modules. This training program is not mandatory for new juvenile probation department deputy probation officers. And in the absence of course requirements, training rosters show that at least half of the 76 deputy officers that took courses from June 2019 to October 2022 took 8 or fewer of the 16 courses. The lack of required trainings for officers new to the juvenile division may contribute to errors such as case plans or report writing mistakes that could impact the claiming of funds. And we also identified inaccuracies in central training records, which did not always capture all of the names from the training sign-in sheets. And then our last finding area was related to written guidelines for the unit. And as of June of 2022, the unit has no updated written policies, procedures, or formal unit description governing its operations since its inception in 2013. In the absence of these guidelines, the roles and responsibilities of the unit have shifted considerably over time, And the unit has no prioritization mechanism for its many responsibilities, despite the deletion of 2 positions from the unit. And our concern was that this could lead to certain responsibilities being dropped in the event of workload or staffing fluctuations. And there's no formal channels for probation staff to request technical assistance from the Quality Systems Unit or for Quality Systems Unit staff to receive Title IV training to oversee case plans. So our recommendations around these areas are to increase the Title IV trainings for juvenile probation department officers, analyze summary reports and audits from the Title IV contractor, JBI, and make the Juvenile Probation Division's Quality Systems Unit training program compulsory for all probation officers who are new to the Juvenile Division, and verifying the accuracy of central training logs, creating an updated formal description and prioritization plan around the unit's roles and responsibilities, and creating formal channels for department staff to request technical assistance from the JPDQSU. And I want to now introduce Alice Herr, who was the project manager for this audit, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Cheryl. I just want to check to see if any public would like to speak on this item.
I have no requests in chambers and no requests online.
Great. Well, first of all, I want to thank Cheryl Soloff again and the Management Audit Division and your team for your hard work on this audit, and also for the Probation Department for connecting with our staff to answer so many questions. Before I ask my question, I want to check if Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any questions on this item?
I don't on this one. It was very clear and straightforward, and the work looks excellent. I just want to say, Cheryl, that your job seems so cool to really get into every single department and understand all of the workings on so much varied subject matter is really quite astounding. So thank you for the continued good work.
Thank you, and I just want to recognize Alice Herr's contributions here. She's done a fabulous job for us for on many audits. So
My apologies.
thank
I should absolutely recognize your whole team. That was implied, but I will make it explicit. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Great. So first of all, I would like to also learn how to support the Probation Department, the Juvenile Division Quality Systems Unit, in the implementation of some of these recommendations to track the progress of the work being done. For recommendations 1.1 and 1.2 related to the Title IV filing, I want to send my appreciation to the Probation Department for accepting the recommendations and committing on working with JBI for training and potential areas of improvements. For recommendation 2.1, the Probation Department says neutral when it comes to this recommendation. The audit's recommendation is to make this training mandatory. And can the Probation Department speak to how they're encouraging new and current deputy probation officer to take this department developmental training program, especially now that things are moving in person as opposed to remote during the pandemic, please?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, Deputy Chief Jill Ugaldi and John Tran can answer your questions related to these subject matters.
Thank you and good afternoon,
Now we
Chair.
can hear you. Go ahead.
Madam Co-Chair, Jill Ugaldi from Probation. So in regards to mandatory training, we strongly encourage all of our officers to participate in this training. We have a standardized training that's 40 hours plus for all probation officers to engage in. This curriculum is on top of and is very department specific in regards to how we roll it out. If the officers are unable to attend because it's not mandatory, we offer makeup courses through our quality systems team. So any officer at any time, if they have a question about report writing or anything else, they're able to go to the unit to get one-on-one assistance. The mandatory training is going to be through concurrence with our union. So it's going to take discussions with our union representatives to gain concurrence to make that mandatory for all officers.
And so, do you have some type of tracking mechanism on as to which individual has taken the training, who has not?
We do. So the way that that works is the quality system team has a registration document that they keep track of that the participants can sign in and out of. That document then goes to our official training unit, and then they put it into the system so that staff can get additional credits for training. There has been some inconsistencies in the way that that information is sent over to the training unit, and since then, excuse me, since then, our supervisor has been working with the manager over at the training unit to make sure that the documents are received and that they're inputted properly. So that's something that we're also working on, making sure that that process is more streamlined.
Great. Yeah, I guess my concern mainly is trying to make sure that, when you say something's recommended, usually it doesn't happen. And when you make it mandatory, then you're really forcing people to do it. But so there's somewhere in the middle ground to strongly encourage them to do it. And of course, until you track it, things don't get done. So I would like to ask if it's possible, let's say in 6 months, is it possible for us to get a off-agenda item to just kind of update the full board on this training program? Would that work?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So, so I would like to have this come back to us, included I believe there's a report back in 9 months, actually. I'm just making sure the timing is clear. The actual report coming back is 9 months from now. That's set to come with the other recommendations, so that you're not generating a separate report. Why don't you just come back and put on one report? My staff has confirmed that the probation wishes to allow for the flexibility for the probation staff to seek technical assistance as needed, during this process, and that makes sense there, Nick? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Just
All right.
if I could, a point of
Please,
clarification. And Fiscal Officer John Tran will provide some information related to some of the information that was up there.
Great. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Chairperson Lee and Vice Chairperson Ellenberg, members of FGOC, for the opportunity. I just wanted to make a point of clarification that in the audit report, it noted under Section 1 that there is a foregone revenue amount of $600 and I believe $17,000 or so. I just wanted to clarify that Title 4E is a very complex reimbursement process. So when we submit our initial claim, the state actually allows counties up to 9 months up to a year to actually submit a revised claim. So during that period, we evaluate to see if there's any missed claims that we submitted or we may have omitted in the initial report, which will help us generate or get more reimbursement. So based on the time frame that Harvey Rose had reviewed, we actually were able to add back about 346 moments, which equates to about $588,000. So, and I'm happy to report that Santa Clara County Probation is actually one of the leaders in drawing down in reimbursement. I have the figures right in front of me. So compared to the state average, based on the last quarter that we submitted our claims for, we performed at a 31% reimbursement rate as compared to 24% of the state. So I just wanted to make that note for the committee to hear. Thank you.
So just to clarify, you said we were able to claim another $588,000, basically.
Yes, that is correct, Supervisor.
Great, and I think the report was saying that there was 617 in net foregone revenue. Was that 588 part of 617, or is it the
Yes,
additional?
so if you were to do a net aggregate between the two, it would actually bring the foregone revenue down to 28,000.
Oh my goodness,
as opposed
that's
to
great.
yeah.
Yes. That's music to our ears, certainly. Thank you so much for the good work. Appreciate it. And thank you, Cheryl, for identifying all that, which helped us, of course, recoup some of this as well. So thank you very much for the good teamwork on making that happen. And if I don't hear any more comments, I'll just ask I'll make the motion to receive report along with the comments to be incorporated.
Second.
Okay. And let's go take the vote.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Chairperson Lee?
Yes, as well. Thank you. All right, moving along, I believe we're now on item number 11. Second here. So item number 11 on the agenda is report from Probation Department relating the implementation of management audit recommendations regarding the Williams F. James Ranch. And again, here, Nick, so yours again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson Lee. We're here to answer any questions that you may have as follow-up. With us today is Deputy Chief Alex Villa, and with us also is Rachel Talamontes, who is the Behavioral Health Director, who also helps us at both the James Ranch and our juvenile hall facilities, overseeing all
Welcome.
of our behavioral health services.
Thank you very much. So before we ask any questions, do we have any public would like to speak on this item?
We do not.
Okay, go ahead and close that. I'll go ahead and ask my colleague, Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any questions?
Thank you. I do, and good afternoon to all of you. It's my understanding that since the time the audit was conducted, all behavioral health services at the ranch and the hall are being conducted by county employees. That's accurate?
Yeah, Rachel Talamontes. I'm Division Director of Behavioral Health, and yes, that's accurate.
Thanks, Rachel. And in the transition and the reorganization of services, I understand that at least at some point there were concerns about filling new positions and ensuring that we would have sufficient coverage to support the youth and their families. Can you comment on the current structure of staff to provide both behavioral services specifically and the general addition of positions?
Sure. I think I'll start with the general filling of positions. We have, I'm very pleased to say, we have 3 individuals who have recently accepted job offers. So they will be starting shortly, and we're in the midst of another recruitment, and we have 3 individuals that are moving on to a second interview panel. So we'll see how that goes to have the remaining, I believe it'll be the remaining 2 of our positions filled. So we have been making steady progress, so we're very happy, and the individuals that have joined us thus far are energized, enthusiastic. Their skill set has been great. They've been connecting with our young people and families and working with probation quite well, so we're very happy about that. In terms of the structure, we have a core team that are at each of the facilities. So we do have a core team that is dedicated to James Ranch. And then we have a team that will see youth for individual services and family services that will see youth wherever they happen to be. So if they're at juvenile hall, they're seen there. If they're at the ranch, they're seen there. And the intention of that, as you know, is for the continuity of care so that the primary treatment does not have to change depending on the actual facility or location that the young person is at.
Which, of course, is exactly the right way to do it. So that's lovely to hear. Since I'm just always thinking about workforce development, I'm curious, the enthusiastic folks that you've recently recruited and are signing on, what is the job level called, and what is the education or certification requirement for that role?
Sure. So the position is alternatively staffed for a psychiatric social worker 1 or 2, or a marriage family therapist 1 or 2. So these are master's level individuals who are either licensed through the Board of Behavioral Science or registered and working towards licensure under supervision.
Got it. Thank you. Shifting a little bit and thinking about the child, adolescent, and adult inpatient psychiatric facility, I still didn't get the name right, that will be coming online. Do you envision that could be a possible venue for treatment for high acuity youth rather than, as was referenced at 2.5, a specialized pod?
I think in terms of inpatient work, as you are, I'm sure, well aware, there's certain criteria with regards to the legal mandate to provide services and supports inpatient. So that would certainly be one of the considerations that we would need to factor into considering where and what the legal criteria, if you will, is. where our young people can be, best supported with regards to their treatment needs.
Right, yeah, I understand the confinement, but thinking maybe about diversionary treatment, but we have at least a few years to figure that one out. And finally, since this is the 6-month progress report, I want to make sure, Supervisor Lee, that if it's your wish, that we really stick to the the every 3-month updates. So we would hear this at 9 months and 12 months?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Then I'll make that a motion.
Sorry,
if
second
needed.
that.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you so much. On the recommendation, first of all, I want to say on 1.2, it's certainly glad to hear that the probation department is now onboarding a new director for research and development team, and also hiring additional staff so that they could support an ongoing full evaluation of the ranch programming. I want to just say how much I would like to support and how crucial this is for our county to be able to actually track the effectiveness of these type of programming, as we will understand how our justice-impacted youth are being supported and how we could support them better so that when they leave our facilities, they do not fall back into bad habits or recidivism. I believe this is what the auditors are calling out for on this portion of the audit, and our county certainly has to do better on ensuring our youth are not falling back into the justice system. Yeah. Anything to add on that, Nick?
No, absolutely. And hiring our research director is certainly going to help in that process. As you all are aware, our research and development unit here in our department is exceptional in the data that we collect and provide, and so being able to provide that data specifically for the James Ranch and more about programs and services and how well they perform, we're looking forward to that.
Very good. Thank you. All right. I don't see any more lights, any more comments. I just want to say, yeah, again, thank you very much for the good work as always. And we certainly want to make sure that our teenagers, basically, that's who they are, right, in our ranch, that they do get the programming, and hopefully that could help save them from this cycle that we're in. Number one. Second is, of course, as far as the girls concerned, our numbers are very, very low, which is great. But I really do think that we need to keep them out of the entire system, especially JV Hall, and even the ranch as well, as much as we can. So thank you again for all your good work, and thank you, Cheryl, again. I think she left already, but
Thank you.
for your cooperation. Thank you so much. And that's all I have. I have a motion and a second. We'll go and take a vote, please.
Vice Chairperson Ellenberg?
Yes.
Chairperson Lee?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we are getting to item number, 14 now. Am I correct? And I think we have our Chief Operating Officer. Greta, it's all yours.
Thank you, Supervisor Lee. And I just wanted to provide a couple of very brief verbal updates on some key areas of focus operationally for the county right now and for me personally. First, as you both know, we are in kind of the hottest time of our preparation of the recommended budget, which, as Dr. Smith mentioned earlier during this meeting, will be released on May 1st. And so I just wanted to give a very brief shout out to Greg and all of the OBA staff who are working incredibly hard in communication with all of the county departments, not just around what are the complexities associated with determining what is within scope to add to the existing resources allocated as part of the base budget for departments to continue the critical work that they do, but also doing a lot of the much more technically complex work even associated with assessing whether base budget adjustments need to occur. And it's been very enjoyable, although very labor intensive for me to be coming up to speed during my first budget season as Chief Operating Officer on the work that team does in collaboration with so many folks across the county organization to put together what is an incredibly large, incredibly complex budget, and very interconnected to a lot of the work that's being presented in other fora, as we discussed earlier. The other thing I just wanted to briefly mention that hasn't really come up as part of the more policy-focused discussions we've been having on the Behavioral Health Department and its work, but I think is very much worth mentioning in the context of this meeting is the very complicated work occurring in the behavioral health department that's absorbing a lot of their leadership and operational resources on what is state mandated payment reform for provision of behavioral health services, where all providers, both operating as part of our county workforce in the behavioral health space, but also all of the community-based organizations with whom we contract, are shifting very radically the way that they bill and capture the services that they're providing that will be reimbursed by the state. And so I just wanted to name that as a huge operational priority for the department, because a lot of these payment reforms are going to facilitate, if we really give it the attention it deserves, the expanded resources needed to more fully fund some of the activities that have been very core policy focuses of both the board and administration. So that effort is underway and is something that's requiring a lot of time and attention. And then finally, I also wanted to just mention that very significant operational impacts, as you both know, are happening in our criminal justice system as a result of the post-COVID court backlog. And wanted to just briefly mention in this forum that great progress is being made on exploring various very specific approaches that might be accomplishable and much more administrative in nature to expedite the efficiency of some of the processes that may both yield more effective adjudicatory processes while still really protecting all of the rights and process requirements associated with criminal cases. And I just wanted to acknowledge the great partnership and engagement from the District Attorney's Office, the Public Defender's Office, the Sheriff's Office, the Probation Department, Pretrial Services, County Executive's Office, of course, and many other stakeholders in the criminal justice system, the court included, all the way up to the presiding judge. Very, very high level of engagement and collaboration, which I think has been one of the things that in many instances has allowed us to really distinguish our system from others, where folks aren't willing to roll up their sleeves and try to come together to solve problems, even where interests aren't always so naturally aligned. So those are my brief reports. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you very much, Greta. Supervisor Ellenberg, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Greta. Thank you for the report. My questions are comparatively very small, but just want to be able to check them here from the dais. First, as I've referenced a couple of times today, about 6th and 9-month follow-ups on presentations, on audit presentations from staff. I think there is already an FGOC policy committee procedure. Do we need to do anything more formal to make that part of the work plan?
Let me get back to you on that.
Okay.
I can review those and send you an email and let you know if there's anything else to do on that.
Perfect. And the second item that I wanted to check in on is the referral from about a year ago for the county to create a returnship program for caregivers, whether for children, parents, or other dependents who want to come back into the workplace. I know the board approved an implementation plan, but I haven't heard any updates, and I wonder if you can give me a sense of when that might come to FGOC or to the board.
Yeah, I can't give you a specific date, but I will let you know that I, just before this meeting, was able to confirm that significant work has already been completed in ESA to figure out what are the appropriate classifications and hiring procedures that might be used for that program. And now we need to think more and come back with implementation around exactly how we would translate those positions into a really effective program. And so I can get back to you on the timeline for that report, but there's lots of work and scoping that's well underway. So I'm hoping it won't be too long before we can return on that.
Thank you. I am glad to hear that. And even when things aren't ready, knowing that we're 30% there, 70%, something that that just is encouraging and reassuring that the work is moving along would be helpful. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. And yeah, my 2 points, first of all, is regarding your mentioned about the state mandated payment reform, and this, some people who are very much against the so-called big government. And our situation here is a lot of the folks that we hire, a lot of the services we provided actually are not only reimbursable, sometimes not even partial, sometimes even full reimbursement. So it is really up to us to get these individuals hired on board, trained, and then actually serve our community. So I certainly think that the work of getting our payment recovered as best as we can, I think is so crucial for us to do better work. So even though we're increasing the headcount, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go into deficit to make that happen. So thanks for that work. And the second thing is regarding the efficiency that you mentioned regarding adjudication of our criminal cases, especially with the district attorney's office, the public defense office, probation, and the courts, and all the work that we're doing there. As a famous quote is, justice delayed is justice denied. And what we're seeing here, of course, is that our population of our jail has gone up significantly since the COVID pandemic is somewhat gone away, because of the fact that so many folks on our system here are really awaiting trial, awaiting for adjudication. So shortening that period is absolutely crucial. One problem that I've been reading, whether it's in the newspaper and hear from folks, is the fact that not able to have open courtroom because of the lack of sheriff deputy has contributed to that problem. Can you let us know from your view working on the system, is that one of the biggest problems we have now in terms of able to get this adjudicated, or something else?
It is certainly a challenge, and I will give credit to the sheriff's office and the court for working collaboratively to figure out what's the best strategy to address that. It's only one challenge, so I'll name another one that's very related, which is the court reporter shortage is likewise creating some real challenges, and there with both sheriff's deputies, court reporters, and then I was thinking about this as Ms. Telemontes was talking about the qualifications needed to provide some of the behavioral health services in the jail. These are all positions that require very specific training, and there just isn't a pool of qualified folks large enough in many instances. And so one thing I'll say about the work being done to address the availability of sheriff's deputies to staff courtrooms, a couple things. One is for court proceedings, we do need a sheriff's deputy, not any other type of staff person in the courtroom with the judge. The sheriff's office has, though, been really thoughtful, and the court's been a good partner in figuring out how to, for example, not have multiple deputies stationed at the metal detectors at the front of court, have one sheriff's deputy overseeing other non-deputized security staff, so that the deputies that would otherwise be there at the front counter can then instead be in the courtrooms. I know that the sheriff's office is also prioritizing ensuring that there is more staffing as they also meet their obligations to ensure adequate staff in the field to meet public safety needs in the community, and are looking to really think about how best to use the court assignment also as a significant way that they move folks through the department so that it becomes part of the initial assignments, as I understand it, that new inbound deputies would fill. And to also think about how to better utilize some of their workforce outside the courts where they're using deputies. Is there any non-deputy staff who can do any of the work that's happening apart from court, thereby allowing more deputies to fulfill some of the needs in courtrooms? But they have made significant progress. There have been more courtrooms that have opened, and then there are others where even if we had a deputy available, there's other court staff challenges around, for example, as I mentioned, court reporters that are a barrier that the court is likewise working on. But because there may be some of these limitations longer term, also looking at how do we most efficiently partner with the court to make sure that every fully staffed courtroom is utilized to its maximum capacity. And I think there's a lot of additional efficiencies there, even as we make slow but steady progress on filling those deputy positions. Right.
As you mentioned, the shifting of the the sheriff deputy from the metal detector area into courtrooms, what's really required by law. I think that certainly makes a lot of sense. But even in addition to that, as you know, we also separately putting in the, we call bounty, a hiring bonus program to get more lateral transfer. So hopefully through those programs, we'll be able to hire a lot more sheriff deputies laterally so that they don't have to go through a training program. They could
Exactly.
be added to the workforce as soon as possible. I do know we have also used retirees, folks who are
Yes.
coming back as extra help in order to cover as well. And I think that's certainly something we need to continue. Along that line of thinking, since you mentioned court reporter is the shortest one, what are we doing? Are we going through third parties outside to get other court reporters coming in? Or is there any way we could increase
Yes.
the bounty, and shall we say, to get more folks to do that work?
Yes, the court has a contract. Not only does the court have its own court-employed court reporters, but in order to try and meet their needs, the court has contracts with several court reporting agencies that a lot of us are familiar with, are used for other court reporting contexts like depositions. And those agencies are struggling to have an available cohort of qualified court reporters, but they are using that strategy and definitely have had some of their needs met. They're also looking at all of the arenas where audio recording rather than having a court reporter is legally compliant. There are some areas where there might need to be a change in state law in order for an audio recording to supplant use of a court reporter in certain types of proceedings. I know the court's looking at that, and the county has, in advocating for additional funding for our local court, but in other endeavors like this one as an example, provided support in legislative advocacy that benefits local court operations here. And we would certainly be happy to partner with the court as they try and identify operational efficiencies that might be achievable if there was a minor change in law in a few areas like this.
So if you could maybe come back to us when you could do a report on how long it take to update us on the legislative side so that maybe we could contact our assembly members or state senators to push forward on these events that would help speed up the educating process, which of course all of these would contribute to lowering the population of our jails.
Yes, happy to ask for information to be provided to the board on any of the legislative actions that might be available to increase court efficiency.
Great, thank you very much. I don't think we need to take a vote on this. It's just a verbal report, and I believe that takes us to the end of our meeting. The next meeting for FGOC is scheduled on Thursday, April 20th at 2 p.m. right here at the Board of Supervisors Chambers at 70 West Heading Street in San Jose. No further comments, and we'll just adjourn. Thank you. See you in April.